listening to the Inspire Excellence podcast, recorded at the BVA headquarters with your hosts Bill Whitaker and Tommy Alquist. Bill is the former CEO of the J.R. Simplot Company and is now a full-time adventure seeker and philanthropist. Tommy is the CEO of BVA Development, co-founder of Crush the Curve Idaho, and most importantly, a full-time grandfather. Each episode focuses on sharing the stories of individuals who are changing the world.
Welcome back to another episode of Inspire Excellence with Bill Whitaker, my co-host, who just returned from another great trip. One of the things about Bill is it takes us a while when we get back together for me to get caught up on his exciting adventures. Bill, welcome back. I'm glad you're safe. How are you?
Yeah, I listen all good, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be back. For some reason, it was really good not having cell service for a couple of weeks, but I'm really glad to have it now.
I'm going to, before we get started, introduce our guest. At one point, you did check in, and you made me really jealous because you said, I've got a little bit of service for a short period of time, and then you sent a picture, and you were standing on the edge of a rock somewhere down in southern Utah around Moab in this beautiful vista, and there you are standing on a rock holding your phone up to get reception. It was a really cool picture. But welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Hey, Bill, we're thrilled to have this episode today. We're really excited. It's been a while since we've wanted to get Rabe on. Ali is executive director of Jessie Tree, and there's a lot to talk about there here in Boise. Can't wait to dig into that. She's also a state senator from District 17, and there's just a little bit going on in the legislative session this session, and we've been relatively quiet about my opinions about the session, so that's going to be exciting to talk about. Ali was also a staff attorney at Home Base, headquartered in San Francisco, where she supported local governments and service providers in efforts to prevent and end homelessness. And so that'll be fun to talk about. She's an attorney. She's very well thought of in all aspects of our community as one of our community leaders. Ali, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you guys.
Well, I don't even know where to begin with you because there's so much to talk about. So, Bill, are you okay if I ask the first question as we get rolling here?
Absolutely, because I think every question is going to be an interesting question with Ali.
I know. Ali, one of the things before we start is I'm very interested in what's going to become an increasing problem here in the Treasure Valley, and that's homelessness. As you know, I serve on the Stop Family Homelessness committee here in Boise, one of the chair people there, and there's just a lot going on in that effort, but it's also frightening because, as you know, with home prices skyrocketing like they are, homelessness is a housing problem, and we've got a housing problem. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that. But before we blaze right into that, tell us a little bit about your background in how you've come to Boise with this incredible experience you have to help us through some of our challenges here. Tell us just a little bit about you.
Hey, well, I'm a Boise native, so born and raised. My parents met down at Tom Greeny's Pub in downtown, and I actually grew up in Middleton and then went to the College of Idaho. So I'm from here. I left college to go to law school on the East Coast, and then I really wanted to work in human rights issues of some kind, really was dedicated to service. I grew up in Middleton, a rural community, saw a lot of poverty and around me, a lot of challenges there, and I wanted to kind of tackle that as an attorney. And so I ended up working, though, as in public defense, and then went on to do that work abroad. So I worked in Cambodia with a public defender, and then transitioned into land rights work. And that's kind of how I ended up in this field. I was in jails with people, talking to them about their problems, and all they wanted to talk about was what led them to commit the crime in the first place, which was unable to survive, unable to live, unable to afford their land that was being taken from them, and just refocused in on land rights issues. So I worked with indigenous tribes in Cambodia and Sierra Leone for 2 years, then worked for the feds for a few years processing refugees. Also, a lot of issues around, displacement, not having a place to be, a safe and stable place to be. And then that led me into working in homelessness in the belly of the beast, the Bay Area, for a couple of years. I was really excited to come back, though, home to work and live and, be closer to family, and was really excited around the idea of prevention for Boise specifically, because we don't have such a huge homeless problem like the San Francisco, Seattle, Portland of our country. We can still get ahead of the problem, but we've got to start now. So that's how I ended up here, just a full circle back into Idaho.
So, Allie, when you talk about homelessness, I'm a little bit preoccupied with it because when I see it in the Portland area, or the San Francisco area, or other major, particularly coastal cities, we are inland, and I agree with you. We're probably in a position where we can get ahead of it. How many families would we have that are homeless in the Treasure Valley area, as an example?
Yeah, so it's tricky to know that exact number, but we know of at least 200 families that are on our list for rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing services, folks who are living on their streets or shelter their cars, maybe cycling through hotels. But there's a much larger number of people that are living in hotels or couch surfing, and who are doubled up with friends or family members that are more difficult to count. But if you ask any school district, they can give you a rough guesstimate, and that number, though, we don't have really good data on. So 200 that we know of, and many more who are in also precarious living situations.
Yeah, no doubt.
Allie, so I actually, as part of the committee I'm on, we went down and toured. We're bringing people in from the community to get them more aware, and so we went down to Catch this week and had a group. Actually, Lisa Groh joined us this week.
Oh, did she?
And we went down and toured, and it was a great tour and understanding a little bit more. And I think it would be great for you to tell us a little bit about what Jessie Tree does, because it's interesting when you think about, so I was an ER doctor for a long time, and I did all night shifts, and I certainly dealt with homeless population in those. It was just part of my daily routine, and we had services to try to help those folks. But there's different categories of people that are homeless, right? And I think what the effort that's going on right now, at least the collective effort, is to try to really tackle family homelessness. And the idea is, if you can put some money behind people to help them get through those sticky points so that they don't become homeless, $1 of prevention before they fall off the cliff is worth a whole bunch of money at the other end, when it's harder to get them rehoused and back into a stable budget where they can survive. So that's kind of the joint effort. Talk to us a little bit about how Jessie Tree, what work you've done, and how there's been a lot of preparatory work in the Valley by a lot of really good people over the last decade to kind of bring us to this point where everyone's trying to work together to help this problem. Can you comment a little bit more and give us a little more flavor about all those things that are going on?
Sure. So we're working towards a campaign to end family homelessness. I've been working on that since I arrived at Jessie Tree 2 years ago, and working through a collaborative effort with Catch. You mentioned they serve folks who are literally homeless in our community, folks living on the streets, shelter their car. And then also some other organizations, Housing Authority is involved, Health and Welfare, the Boise School Districts, and Jessie Tree. And Jessie Tree is the organization that is seeking to prevent homelessness before it starts for families and for our community. So we serve people who are essentially losing their homes, being evicted for whatever reason. Usually it's because of non-payment of rent, inability to pay rent. And then we'll either catch them up on the rent that they owe, or work with them to find a new place and pay for a security deposit. And part of what we do is coupling financial resources with supportive services. So everybody we work with has a case manager So they learn to budget. They maybe will get connected to benefits or resources or jobs to help them stabilize. We also ensure that they can build a better relationship and communication with their landlord throughout. So that's kind of the niche that we're filling in all of it. We're catching those folks ideally before they end up in the shelter, the streets, or the car, need to be served by catch. And we're doing it one family at a time, which, as you know, the need is really huge right now. So, yeah.
So, Allie, if as I understand it, there are various programs that subsidize, rent and subsidize individuals that have a specific need. How's that working out? Is it working out well? Is it efficient? Does the government really come through, or is it too inefficient, takes too long, or whatever?
So are you talking about, there is a lot of federal rental assistance available right now for sure. And then there's also, Section 8 vouchers and, our folks who are more chronically homeless do get some what we call permanent supportive housing vouchers, which are permanent vouchers. But I think, we're all working together to get that government money out. There are, certain check boxes that the funding always has to fit. And sometimes with prevention, private flexible dollars are more helpful for us because we have to act really quickly. And sometimes we can't get a piece of paper on time or a document from the tenant. So, that's the shortcoming there. And then two, a lot of those government dollars can't be used for case management and supportive services. So, which we think is definitely see as a big need, just in supporting families one by one to reach, short-term and long-term stability in housing. And so we're still funding that mostly with, philanthropy and some government dollars, but case management is definitely needed too, as well as, flexible private money. So other communities are braiding all sources of funding together and trying to work together to figure out how to do it. And we're doing that too.
Right. So if I knew of a family that had kind of this this need, and it's very compelling at the time, and I get the fact that all of a sudden there's two children and parents, and they're going to be evicted. Where will they go? What will they do? They may or may not have work. So would they come to Jessie Tree and say, "Can you help us? What can you do for us?" And then how does that process look when they arrive at your office?
Great question. So our process has changed a lot over the last year because even just last year we were underwater with requests for assistance, and we could not help everybody who came to us. Now we are at a point where we can refer people to one of those other governmental sources of funding. At least we're close. So we can help people right now. Basically anybody who walks to our door who's at risk of losing their home, we'll provide them with supportive services, case management, and then pay the back rent that they owe or a security deposit, kind of whatever, to keep them in their home. Before, though, we had a process to try to identify people with the highest risks, the most vulnerable households. So we would ask a few questions around if they have a 3-day notice, if they have an eviction court date, if they have a former episode of eviction and homelessness, which if you have that on your record, you're much more likely for that to happen again. And then two, if people had an incarceration record, which also is a high indicator that they would be likely end up homelessness.
Right.
So we would, in the past, prioritize those folks based on their answers to those questions. But right now, theoretically, the community has enough prevention resources to support everybody who asks for it, either at Jessie Tree or at the Housing Authority or IHFA through one of those other governmental sources. So, yeah.
Well, so one more question.
Yeah.
It feels more complex right now with rising rents, significant shortages. Can you even find anything? And at the same time, I feel like we had kind of in the community, a coordinated effort by lots of different not-for-profits. And is that still going on where everybody's coordinating and the need has gone up significantly, I believe?
The need has gone up significantly for sure. And those cases continue to be more complex. I think we definitely, in terms of addressing the need, we need more case managers to work with people to find housing. I think we could use more staff support to build more landlord relationships and, dedicate more units to serving some of these vulnerable folks. We need more housing supplies. So those are the things that we're struggling with right now. But our case managers are, each case does take them, I think, more time in some ways than it did when the housing crisis wasn't so bad, because if they needed to find a new place to live, we could do that. Now it takes more time. A lot of families that we're working with in Ada County are having to move out to Canyon County. There are still affordable rentals out in Canyon County, but that's, the reality that we're in. When I worked in San Francisco, we worked with families in San Francisco, had to move them out to Fresno, Sacramento. That's just the reality. And we're doing that too.
So Bill, I'm going to maybe take this opportunity, hopefully the people that are listening to this podcast, to talk a little bit about this coordinated effort that you're such a big part of. So we're trying, Bill, to raise the community, businesses and individuals to raise $8 million. And I'll tell you how that money breaks down. It's kind of a 5-year program to supplement what's going on. And before I say this, there has been so much good work that's gone on by Jessie Tree, Catch. There's just so many different other organizations that have been working on this for a long time that has allowed us to get to this point. But the bulk of that money, Bill, and they've got great research, that if you put $2,800 behind a family that's ready to become homeless, that's kind of the average number that it takes, that you can have 85% success rate of keeping them in a home. So that's the bulk of that money, is just trying to say, hey, we need additional dollars to prepare for what's coming to prevent homelessness in families, that then once the family's homeless, it's just exponentially harder to get them back in a home. And so that's the number that I think is really compelling, $2,800 per family, that if you're able to do that, you have 85% success in keeping them in a home with all these services wrapped around them. Second thing is, I think it's a $900,000 number to create one hotline, because right now, even though everyone's working together, there's just lots of different ways to triage. And as an old ER doctor, I'll tell you, if you don't triage people to the right location, sometimes you end up using the wrong resources. So for example, I'll use the urgent care ER example. If you had a better way to triage someone when they called and said, hey, I have this, and this wrong with my child, and you could say, oh, you don't need to come to the ER. What you really need is to see your primary care doctor, or what you really need is to go to an urgent care, and you can get that taken care of for much less expensive. But a lot of those people will just go to the ER. Well, what we're trying to do with this effort is create a triage line that triages people to the appropriate level of services. So we're not having people that could require a lower level of services going right into the ER, essentially, for homelessness, and get the maximal services. That's the second thing. And then the most exciting thing, I think, for me, is we're really going to try to create a consortium a council, if you will, of landlords and apartment owners. And Caleb Roop and Andrea are helping us with this to try to get everyone on the same page and start talking about how we can get more supply dedicated to this population. And that is probably the most exciting thing for me, because all of these other efforts are going on, and they're obviously going to be getting better and more harmony between everyone. But unless we can increase the supply of housing, unless we have more units available to help folks, that really becomes where the rubber meets the road. And so that's kind of the three-pronged effort that I want to get out there as we're talking today, because I think all three of them are so critical to having success here. And there's a lot of excitement around it. I think we're going to be able to raise the money and be able to help in any way. So anyone listening today that wants to donate or be part of this problem, because we don't want to let, I love what you're doing, Allie, because we're getting out in front of this proactively. And instead of, what's coming with the housing crisis we're in, again, homelessness is a housing problem. With what's going on, we are going to have more homelessness, and we're going to have more people that are suffering, and getting out ahead of that the best we can. And I also warn everyone, I said, even with all these efforts going on, we're going to have a problem here. It's the housing crisis is just getting worse here. It's because it's such a desirable place to come. We've got so many people moving here. We just don't have supply to be able to meet those needs, and so prices are being driven up. But anyway, sorry, probably more than, but I did want to talk about that because there's a lot of great efforts going on. I'm really proud of our community for coming together on this.
Me too. It's been so fun to be part of it. It's been a long road, a ton of meetings and trying to figure out what that, what those challenges are that we need to tackle, and how we need to kind of break down the structures and processes that we have to build a new, more coordinated effort. I think it's really exciting. I did just want to build on what you talked about a little bit with cost, because you kind of asked me about it earlier too. But yeah, $2,800 to keep a family in their home. We know that compared to the cost of what it costs our communities to take care of somebody who is chronically homeless, $54,000 a year in supportive health emergency services. And then two, the cost to rehome a family after they've already fallen out of homelessness is $5,000 to $10,000. So yes, prevention is really cost effective. It's also the right thing to do. If we as a community don't believe that people should be out on the streets, we should prevent them from falling into that situation. There's been a lot of research too, Tommy. I'm sure they've talked to you about it on the mental, physical, social health effects of housing instability of any kind, falling into shelter, living in your car, especially for kids. It's a really traumatic experience, but we can get ahead of it. And so I think to the coordinated efforts that we're working on, to triage are really exciting. Right now, we all have our different phone lines, and we forward calls to each other or tell the person on the phone to call this number and this number and this number. People are having to call 10 different phone numbers, fill out 10 different applications to even get help. And that's a bit of an exaggeration, but they're having to kind of go all over the place. That's not trauma informed. So just having a place where, yes, you call this phone number, you'll get sent to the place where you need is really exciting as well. I think how we're going to do that is, we'll be a triage kind of system, and folks with in need of prevention resources, supportive services, with 3-day notices or eviction court dates will come to Jessie Tree. When we're at capacity, the idea is we'll communicate that to the line and let them know, and then other prevention clients will be referred over to some other government resources like Housing Authority or IHFA. And then anybody who's literally homeless will be provided with support on the phone, and then also put on the list for a rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing voucher or Section 8 voucher. So that's kind of the idea with the triage. We're really excited about that, to just coordinate, not have several different phone numbers and applications floating out there, and just people knowing that they're going to get help. And two, Tommy, I'm also really excited about this landlord collaborative effort. We have plenty of landlords, I think, already who've stepped up and just kind of informally saying, I want to help the community. I even talked to a landlord the other day. He's like, I used to be a landlord in the Bay Area. I don't want that to happen here. Like, how can I be a part of this? So I think there's a lot of energy behind it, and just pulling it all together to get a bunch of units dedicated to our really vulnerable households that we're seeing is going to be really a game changer for us. So very excited about all of that as well. So yeah. And I did want to mention one thing. So some of the funding too will go to case management staff. So this year, Jessie will get one new case manager, and then two, it'll go to rental assistance. So some of the money, whoever's listening wants to donate, will go to that as well. And then underpinning all of this is this, are a lot of plans that we've been working on together for 2 years now. So exciting.
So Allie, will there be an organized fundraising initiative, or how will you go about raising $8 million as an example?
There is an organized fundraising initiative through the leadership cabinet that Tommy's a part of. So, and then we're just going to be, we organizations will be supporting that effort. So. Good.
Hey, Allie, one of the things that I struggle with, because we're starting to go out and talk to people and try to raise money, and let's you and I and Bill go back and forth on a few misconceptions. What are some of the biggest myths that you know or see out there about homelessness? Because I'm finding that with a lot of people, I have to educate them. Like one of the first things is, it's kind of their fault, right? If there wasn't drug abuse and mental illness, then they wouldn't be homeless. That's one. And I usually say, there certainly is a segment of the homeless population that is chronically mentally ill. That is a whole other issue, because how do we increase services and how do we get those folks into the treatment they need to stabilize them? There is also the substance abuse part of this. But what we're talking about with this effort is family homelessness. These are people, and I think for a lot of people, they hadn't heard this term, but it's ALICE population. So it's asset limited, income constrained, and employed is what it stands for. So these are people that are kind of the working poor, right? They're paycheck to paycheck. If a car breaks down or they get a medical bill, it doesn't take much to hit that threshold to where they go from having enough money to have rent and surviving to not having enough money to have rent. And in an environment where there's so much need for housing, once those folks lose their house or their home, it's just super difficult to get in. So I think that's probably one of the biggest myths I try to bust early on, is that, hey, these are families that are right on the edge that we're just trying to help prevent them from becoming homeless and having enough units that they can be taken care of. What are some other ones that you hear all the time that we can help dispel today?
Tommy, you nailed it. The biggest one, people are, just don't understand. I think people that are not living paycheck to paycheck and maybe don't know anyone who is, they don't know that a third of our community in the Treasure Valley is living paycheck to paycheck. Anything could come up, a healthcare bill, some kind of, their hours are cut at work. We've seen, people have their cars break down. Anything unanticipated in life can lead a third of families in the Treasure Valley to a place where they can't pay their rent. And that's how homelessness first happens to a family. I think that's, it's been, definitely a lot of education, because I think when people think of homeless people, they think of those folks who are more chronically ill and have those substance use disorders. But there are a lot of people in our community who are becoming homeless for the first time. Tommy, I know you've seen the first time homeless numbers, but every single year, about 75% of the people becoming homeless in our community are becoming homeless for the first time in their lives. They've never been in this situation before, and it's simply because their housing is not affordable. Homelessness is a housing affordability problem at the root, and that is something that I think we need to definitely shout from the rooftops. I think the other thing is, once somebody becomes homeless, it's very difficult for them to get out of that situation. So again, just highlighting the importance of prevention. I think people maybe don't know that what homelessness does to a family. So that's something I try to, especially to kids, that's something I try to explain to people. Living in shelter is highly traumatic for a lot of folks, and not something we want people to, a situation we want people to live in. In terms of myths too, I think there are still, so we work mostly in the eviction space. So people have a 3-day or they're in eviction court. And there's definitely a lot of misconception around like why people are getting evicted. A lot of people that I talk to initially think that tenants who are being evicted are bad tenants. You know, they've destroyed the place, they've put holes in the walls, all this stuff. That is not true at all. 98% of the people that I see in eviction court are in there simply because they cannot pay their rent. It's not that they don't want to pay. It's not that they're lazy or they're not trying. It's not that they're putting holes in the walls. It's that they simply cannot pay. So that's the other big thing that I'm working through. Another big one for us, Tommy, is that, and Bill, is that landlords in the community, we really strive to maintain good relationships and rapport with the landlords that we work with. Our case managers do a ton of mediation, back and forth. I think, some people in the community think that all landlords are bad, which is not true. There are a lot of really good landlords and people who are from this community who want to help their tenants. And those are usually the landlords that will reach out to us proactively and say, hey, like this person needs some help. This person, is a little late. I'd really like to keep them here. How can we work together? There are bad landlords, but most of them are big property management companies and investment firms that are sometimes not even based in Idaho. They may not even have a presence in Idaho. And those are the ones that we're having the biggest problem with. And I think they give a bad rap to everybody else.
Well, they just don't have the community grounding like a local landlord. So, okay, someplace, I do not want to get off this topic, but someplace here I want to talk about being a state senator. But
we got to shift at some point. I agree. Let's get into that, Bill. I know you and I are both very happy with this session. We're very happy with the focus that the legislature's had on people and families and improving public health. We're very happy with the way that they're laser focused on early childhood education and K-12 education, the expertise they're bringing to higher education. The list goes on and on about how happy we are with this session.
I think of you coming in as a new state senator and as a Democrat also, by the way, and what a spectacular circumstance. I think for all of us to have you in there and also to win the election. But then you walk into this legislative session and you kind of go, did I really sign up for this? And I mean, that's the way we feel. I think that's exactly the way the community feels right now.
Well, it's nice to hear that because sometimes I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality in there. So. Well, I mean, at the same time, yeah, as the legislature, so it's been fun. Let me just walk back a little bit before I launch in, but to complaining. But it's been enjoyable. I think I do bring a different perspective, and just talking about the experiences that I've seen people facing in the community because of the housing crisis and this, these serious issues that urban areas in Idaho are facing, and how that impacts really lower income folks or even moderate income folks in the community. So I think that's been really cool, and I think people are receptive to that. But yeah, unfortunately, our legislature, well, a lot of members in the House are basically, controlled by a special interest group who dictates like how they vote based on this subjective scoring system. That is the reality that is going on over there, which is just really sad to think that we don't have, a lot of our legislators are not independent thinkers at this point, especially on the House. And then, that's been, I think, a big challenge. it's why my first piece of legislation didn't pass, because it had a -1 score on it. So there's not much you can do about that. But, at the same time, where all these things are happening that you guys are talking about, I think in particular, the two that really stand out for me right now is that we are failing to pass this early learning grant that would save Idaho, tens of millions of dollars and boost tax revenue and, essentially pay for itself. And then also provide early learning and, literacy for young kids, et cetera. And then the higher ed budget, which, we need universities to educate people so they can go join the workforce, et cetera. Two basic budgets that just can't quite get passed because of these conspiracy theories around a social justice curriculum that's being pushed that is not actually, happening. While that's happening, at the same time, the legislature is passing all these bills to give themselves more power to act during an emergency and call themselves into special session for any reason whatsoever with 60% majority. That really concerns me because where we have a body that is really dysfunctional, can't even do the job that it's been set out to do. It's also trying to give itself more responsibility. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think that politically, as you know, I think that Bill was registered Republican. we're Republicans. So
Yeah.
I think that the hypocrisy for me is the thing, right? Because although they preach local control, they're doing everything but local control. Although they preach, the light hand of government, it's exactly the opposite that they're doing. And I shake my head at what's become of a party that really, and the other thing I would point out is, what are the solutions other than just control and anarchy when you don't like government and complete government control when you want to control something? But what are the actual long-term solutions for people's lives? I don't hear very many of them from that side of the aisle anymore, and I do think it's unfortunate. Let me ask you this: I follow it very closely. I think a lot of people do. But how do we reach out to maybe the Treasure Valley, people that may not pay that much attention to what goes on in that state house, during these sessions? I think that's, for me, the biggest worry, is because this affects people. Think about these budgets. Think about government spending. Think about the amount of dollars that have been pumped into Idaho from the federal government during the COVID crisis, and then you've got this body that's controlling all that. How do we get awareness out there to the general public about what may be going on?
Oh my gosh. Echo everything that you said, and I totally appreciate you guys being Republican. My dad is, and my partner is, and a lot of friends too. So I think that's just Idaho. I love that about Idaho. We have a mix of ideas from both sides of the aisle, and I think because of that, we all tend to be, hopefully, well, not all of us, but a lot of us tend to be more moderate, which is, I think, always a good thing. So how do we get the word out? I've been thinking about this too, because I get a ton of emails every day and phone calls from people all over Idaho, but most of them are from folks in the far right who are telling me, can't believe that I supported a early learning grant that will indoctrinate our children, blah, blah.
Right.
I'm not getting nearly as many emails or calls from just regular people that are trying to advocate for the right thing. And that is really frustrating for me because I know they're out there and I know people care, but they're just there's almost this apathy. I think there's a hyper focus on national politics and not enough focus on local. And something I did throughout my campaign was really try to educate people about how local politics actually impact you more in a lot of ways. And here's why they're important, and here's why you should look down the ticket. But I talked to voters all throughout last year, presidential election year. They had no idea there was a state legislative race on their ballot. There's just such a level of, I think, naivety about local politics, which does lead to that apathy that I don't know how to overcome. So if you have ideas, I'm open. I'm open.
Ellie, it feels to me like that this has gotten a lot of attention, and you're right. A lot of us live in the middle. A lot of us live in the moderate category. I always tell people, I'm either a Joe Manchin Democrat or a Mitt Romney Republican, and I'm someplace in that category. Where's my party? And I think that it manifests itself in Idaho pretty profoundly this year. And I think the opportunity for, it seems to me like some of the opinion columns are coming around and doing a good job. I keep watching opinion columns that are starting to step up in a pretty significant way. It's kind of interesting because the legislators that I know personally, that these are good people that are literally pandering to a base, and you're right, to a score or whatever. And I think that the apathetic middle or the apathetic moderates have to step in and make sure they're heard at this point.
Exactly. A loud minority is causing a lot of these challenges, I think, and the moderate folks who maybe are, just more peaceful, even-keeled, level-headed, don't feel the need to shoot from the rooftops, but they need to activate somehow.
Allie, I'm sitting here thinking about our conversations today, and going to ask you a couple maybe personal questions. So you grew up in Middleton, Idaho girl, born and raised. You go away to become an attorney, and then you dedicate your life to really helping people that are struggling in one significant way. Let me just tell you, this homelessness problem is going to be one of the biggest problems we face as a state and a community, and you're in the middle of that. And then in the middle of that, you decide to go run for office and take this role as a legislator. What motivates you? What goes through your mind when you're laying in bed at night? Because you're obviously making a difference. I'm sure some days it may feel like you're not, but tell us. There's a lot of people that listen to this. Where do you drive your inspiration from, and what motivates you to be a public servant like you are?
It's a great question. I think just inherently I have a lot of energy and passion. And, having grown up in rural Idaho and having seen poverty and the effects of that, firsthand, and then even going to the College of Idaho and serving in the community there in Caldwell, seeing some of the experiences that people directly around me were dealing with, I think, just made me want to do something about it. I'm really action oriented, just inherently. I see a problem and I want to fix it. I just really, really want to fix it immediately. So I think that is kind of where I'm coming from, and, just my experiences since then growing up. But my mom's a teacher. She has really a heart to serve the community, and I grew up around that, seeing her. She was a special ed teacher for a while too, seeing that. My dad worked for the state for many years too, and it just I think they were good examples. I had good examples all around me growing up, but I don't know where all the motivation comes from. I think it's just some inherent energy that I was born with, but also just this really strong desire to fix the real problems that we're dealing with. Fix intractable problems. I like solving problems, and this is a big one. I agree. It'll take a lot of mental energy. What do I think about at night when I'm laying in bed? Mostly just income inequality and the housing crisis. And I stare at the ceiling and think about how we could solve it. So, yeah, that's what I think about. But, it's been really fun. I'm kind of wearing two hats. I was, and some of them at the same time. It's been really frustrating at Jessie trying to deal with these issues around eviction and homelessness when I felt like our state government isn't doing enough to focus on these, root issues and investments that they could make, in our housing trust fund, for example, to boost supply or to revise landlord-tenant code to make it more equitable and fair and clear in court. I was excited to kind of elevate that at the state level, which I've been trying to do so far. I think we'll keep the conversation going. It's an issue that none of us are going to be able to ignore, hopefully the legislature will come around eventually.
Just a real quick. I love you in politics. I love you as a state senator. I think it's the exact role, especially with your passion and commitment to homelessness. But think about, and you've had to have thought a little bit about what politics looks like for you in the future. Can you comment on that? Are you long-term committed to staying in politics? Because we need young people that will stay in and kind of grind it out.
We do need more young people to step in and serve. And it's been honestly really difficult for me. I've been working 2 jobs for the last 2 months. Yeah. I'm not retired. I can't afford to only be a state senator. And for me too, being younger, I don't have a family yet. That's something that we'll probably do within the next, some next years. So it is hard to juggle it all. But I don't have any ambitions per se for what I'm going to do next. I think for me, I always just kind of go with the flow and take opportunities as they come. So we'll see what comes up for me in the future. I think for me, I'll always make the decision to take on an opportunity that allows me to make more of a positive impact. So whatever that ends up being, I don't know.
Good for you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey,
yeah.
I'll end with some real a story from this last week for me, and maybe it'll inspire you to keep on rolling. So, Bill, I haven't even told you this yet, but I was working with one of our subcontractors, and he's one of the bosses, like one of the leaders that runs the job site. And I was sitting there talking to him, and I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last few months. But he said, "Hey, you don't remember where I met you, do you?" I said, "I have no idea where I met you. I thought I just met you, on this job a few months ago." And he said, "No." He said, "I wondered if you'd remember me, but I sure remember you." And I said, "Well, where did we meet?" And he said, "Well, when you were running for governor, I was homeless, and I was staying at the Boise Rescue Mission." And he said, "You walked over to me and you sat down on a bench with me and you talked to me for a while and you just asked me about my life and what I was doing." And he said, "That's where I met you." And I said, "Oh, I do remember talking to someone there." And he said, "Well, that was me." And this guy now is back on his feet. I mean, he's a superintendent of a job site, doing good work. And I thought, oh my goodness, sometimes you just need those real, and I know you probably have a whole list of those stories that act as real inspiration to you to keep doing what you're doing. All I've got to say is thank you for what you do. Our podcast is Inspire Excellence. Bill and I try to get people on that tell stories of making a difference in the lives of others and inspire other people. Can't think of anyone better right now in what we've got going on than someone serving in our legislature, someone serving in our community with homelessness. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. We'll have to have you back as this rolls out and hear more from you. But we really appreciate your time today, Allie.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's really nice to chat with you. Hopefully we can meet in person next time, and it'd be fun to spend more time together. I really enjoy this conversation, and thank you for highlighting the real issues, like housing and other issues that our community is facing. I appreciate it.
Bill, any final words, and we'll sign off.
No, thank you, Allie. We're going to be staying close to you on all fronts of what you're doing with your life. Okay, thank you.
We'll sign off from this episode of Inspire Excellence. Everyone out there listening, go find a way to inspire someone else or be inspired. We'll see you again next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Inspire Excellence podcast. We hope you've heard something today that will inspire you to make a difference in the world. Join us again for our next episode.